Hi, in this third presentation we are going to look specifically at Leonard Bernstein, and we will find many different collections of archival materials on him by sort of going through the process that I reviewed in my last presentation. You all are very familiar with Grove Music Online, and here is the biography of Bernstein. You will find that it is very extensive, and I carefully read through it and took notes on all of the different places and people he worked with. At the end of the biography, of course, there is a bibliography, as you would expect, and it directed me to two different websites, the Leonard Bernstein website and the Leonard Bernstein collection at the Library of Congress. So please take a look at the Grove article on your composer and make sure you to explore any resources they direct you to. We will look at these websites in a few minutes. We have a list of associations that Bernstein had throughout his lifetime based on his biography. In terms of education, he went to Boston Latin, Harvard, Curtis, and had a long-time association with the Berkshire Music Center. I have a list of his teachers. It might be very useful to look for collections related to Bernstein's teachers. They might include important correspondence and other, maybe even oral histories by these teachers about Bernstein as a student. And of course, we are very familiar with his associations with various orchestras, the New York Center City Orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, Tanglewood, the Israel Philharmonic, Vienna Philharmonic. He also taught at Brandeis and Harvard. He had long-term teaching relationships with these universities. At Harvard, he was a philosopher, and he would give different presentations on the philosophy of music. It's the reason I listed these particular orchestras are because he had significant relationships with them. Of course, he conducted all over the world. But in the Grove Music article, these were the ones that he had long-term relationships with and where he was a regular conductor. So we can start with his education. It's very easy to find education websites, and when you go there, you should look at the library pages and the special collections pages. Here is the links to Harvard's library and Harvard's archives. And here is the link to the Curtis Institute of Music archives. You will find that libraries and archives are very much connected. So let's take a look at Harvard. You would expect your basic search box here is primarily with the library catalog materials. Need to search for books, other articles, and other materials. But we might want to help with special collections and archives, and I always encourage you to find that link first. And every library will tell you how to access materials on their website. It might look different. For Harvard, they have a Hollis Images catalog, so they have digitized many images, and you can view the digitized images here. And they also have a catalog just for archival discovery, and it is distinct from their library catalog. So we will just do a basic keyword search here, and we're not going to do much more than that. And we find many different collections listed. These sort of a box icon indicates that this is a collection, not a book, not a recording, although it might include different. And you can see that there are a lot of other people whose collections have relationships with Bernstein. We're going to look at the first one, the collection of correspondence and ephemera of Leonard Bernstein and others. This is what a typical finding aid looks like. It can look different, but you will have the collection overview, the collection inventory, and it's nice in this catalog, if there is digital material related to the collection, they will list it here. In this case, they have not digitized material in this collection. It gives you the scope, and you can see that there is other people in this collection: Aaron Copland, Johnny Green, Arthur Lawrence, Dmitry Shostakovich, Sondheim, and others. You can look at the compositions that are in this collection, and it tells you which compositions have related materials. So here's his Under Beethoven essay, which he wrote in 1934, and he had given an autographed signed copy for the Boston Latin School. Here's the list of correspondence. Here are ephemera such as playbills, portraits, things of that nature, and there are also photographs in this collection. It's not a huge collection, but there are some interesting materials. This is a very good example of what an archival collection finding aid looks like. Okay. And the repository details is that this is part of the Houghton Library repository, and that's their principal repository for rare books, manuscripts, and their performing arts collections. And they give you the contact information right here, and this is when you can email them and to decide if this is worth your visiting it. The Curtis Institute of Music also had a long-standing relationship with Bernstein as a student. Again, you'll have a nice description of their priorities and what they collect, their policies, and then their collections. Reading through this, it does direct you for their manuscripts and personal papers to their finding aids, which are right here. And these relate to their faculty, staff, and alumni. So we could expect to find something here on Bernstein, perhaps. And it comes right up. We don't even have to search for Bernstein. It's one of the first collections on the list. And we find that this includes programs, photographs, articles, and posters. Down here, describes who organized the collection, and the container inventory, which will tell you exactly what's in each box. And it's just one box, a 1931 scrapbook, and this box of programs. Not a lot of materials here. But if you're interested in photographs, you might be able to find photographs, programs that Bernstein participated in during his student years. There's a lot of information available. It might not be right in the finding aid, but this would direct you to the collection and contacting the archivist to ask them what your research question is and if their collections can help support your research. So we've looked at their education institutions. Then you can do searches for the professional associations the person had, the orchestras they worked with. I've chosen two links, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra and the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra website. Each of these orchestras have significant archives. The New York Philharmonic Orchestra has, due to a large grant from Leon Levy, digitized their entire archives. Unfortunately, I've had issues accessing this today, probably because of the situation in New York right now. But I encourage you to go back to this link in the future. We'll talk a little bit about it later. But the Vienna Philharmonic is still up and running today, and you can look at the entire performance history of the orchestra on their website. So if I wanted to find when Leonard Bernstein conducted, I'm just doing a basic search, and starting in 1966, looks like his first concert was then. He did works by Mozart and Mahler, and it tells you what series and what his role was in the concert, as obviously he was a pianist as well as a conductor in these concerts. So it enables you to get a large amount of information prior to visiting, to look at any materials you want to see on site. We have professional associations such as the Library of Congress and the Leonard Bernstein Office, which is the corporation that was formed to promote his music, to manage his copyright and royalties, and to sort of guard his legacy. We'll start with the Library of Congress. His collection has become a part of what's called the American Memory Collection, which was their first, well, my link might be out of date, so let's find it another way. I obviously did this presentation a while back. So here are their digital collections, and having searched Leonard Bernstein, I find several collections which include materials of Bernstein. Andre Kostelanetz, Aaron Copland, and the Irving Fine collection. Here is the Leonard Bernstein collection, and it is digitized. Here's the manuscript of Candide. Here's coursework that he prepared for Harvard. There are photographs. And we have a nice introduction to this collection. It should tell you what are the more important things in the collection and the more unique people that come out of this collection, particularly in terms of correspondence. And it does some pretty more narrow searches so that you can pull up all the materials related to associates of Bernstein, Mark Blitzstein, Boston Symphony Orchestra, Nadia Boulanger. So it does a little bit of compilation on your behalf, because as the Library of Congress, they find that these are the searches that people are continually asking them about. So they try to provide some links to all the resources relating to these topics. So it's always good to start at the Library of Congress, and I will update this link in your PowerPoint presentation. The Leonard Bernstein collection is the official business organization that continually represents Bernstein interests, the interests of his family, and promotes his work on an ongoing basis. You can see they license his music and edit it and publish it. If you are wanting to edit or republish a manuscript work by Bernstein, well, of course, you would have to start here. And this is where you would probably approach for parts and performance rights relating any work you wanted to perform. They have a nice feature in this website, the works. For every work They give you an incredible background on the actual composition. So we'll look at Candide. Nice little archival image of the book, a nice overview of the history of this work, and lots of information. It tells you about which versions are available for licensing, but the original version is no longer available for performance. That's interesting. So here are the different versions that they have. When it premiered, what the scoring of the work is, arrangements, premieres, the concert version, and who you would contact for licensing. So in the future, if you are involved in the production or direction of this work, you have a lot of information here available to you, including digital score. It seems like they've done a really excellent job of giving you a complete overview of this particular work. Again, this site is its own place to start. We have lots of his lectures, discography, it's just a really amazing website. And so this is why I did Bernstein, because I knew I would have no problem finding really interesting things on him. We are going to continue. We know that Bernstein was very active in New York, and we know that the New York Public Library has a vested interest in documenting the life of people who live there and who are active there. So wherever your composer lives, make sure to check out their local libraries, particularly in major cities who do take an active interest in the people that live there. The New York Public Library has a music division, and it's a very excellent collection. And there are lots of tools here to finding vocal music, circulating orchestra collection. And then they have digital collections. And I'm sure if we looked up Bernstein, we would find and then again, this is searching a library catalog, so it will bring up both books and other types of resources. So you can see this is your traditional library. We might look under research because that's probably more, and here is their archives portal and their digital collections. This is where you would look instead of the library catalog. So sometimes with archives you have to look around, you have to explore the website and look for specific finding tools for archival materials instead of the library catalog. Even though many library catalogs will be cataloged in the library catalog. Okay, we don't need to spend too much time here, but I wanted to show you that as an example. Again, the Digital Public Library of America might be another resource. It's sort of a mass effort of public libraries to submit their digital content to one place. Libraries always like to collaborate. They are always interested in making things more accessible. So in terms of their digitized materials, you might find a few more things at the Digital Public Library of America. So we've looked at mining resources from the various associations, personal or professional, that a person has throughout their lifetime. We just go to the websites that represent those people or those organizations and look for archival materials or collections. But are tools that are more broader in their approach, and one of those tools is the archive grid, which is sort of like WorldCat for archives. So WorldCat is a catalog of most everything you would find in libraries across the United States, and as you know, in other countries, some in other countries as well. Well, Archive Grid is a collaborative effort of archives to share their finding aids and collections across to a larger group of users. So this is an important source to look at when you're searching for materials related to a specific person. And it will list collections that mention Leonard Bernstein. We have one at the New York Public Library, Library of Congress, Lawrence Public Library. Ball State University has an electronic resource that has archival considerations, even drawings in collections. So anytime his name is mentioned, that you would find a link to a collection. This is an oral history interview with Leonard Bernstein around 1961. It's been completed by Leonard Rist. So this might reveal some interesting things that come up related to the person you're researching. And you might find yourself traveling a lot if these are of interest to you. But as you can see, the Library of Congress comes up over and over again. In the list of those kind of resources, there are also regional finding aids. We mentioned the Ohio Link one, and we mentioned something like the Online Archives of California. A lot of the states have indexes or such tools for their archives within their states. And then we also mentioned the Archives Portal Europe. So all of those are tools to help you find collections. We're going to look at finding aids. So this is a finding aid from the Leonard Bernstein collection at the Library of Congress. We've looked at these before, and this is a slightly larger collection, so it hopefully will be more informative. A collection, the finding aid will always tell you what dates are represented. So these circa 1900 to 1995, but the bulk of the collection is around 1933 to 1990. There are about 400,000 items in this collection, and this collection is 1,723 boxes long. It also tells you what the language of the collection is in, and the summary. There are the contents list, which I'm not going to read, but it gives you a very good idea of what you would expect to find, and then it shows you how the collection is organized. This is great for keyword searching. If you're looking for Bernstein's correspondence with a specific person, you can search the finding aid by that person. This is a tool I use often. Sometimes I have people ask me for letters between Babin and other people. So I can look up the Babin, and I can find letters between Babin and Leonard Bernstein, 1959. So it's really, even the finding aid can be a useful source of information. And again, here are the descriptions of how you would use the collection. There's always copyright issues, so if you're going to publish any of the content, you need to be aware of those, and you need to give appropriate credit for any printing of photographs. You have to often get permission to print images or photographs. and it tells you any restrictions. Sometimes you have to write a letter. Materials in this collection may not be copied without the permission of the copyright owner, usually the author or his or her heirs. So the Library of Congress staff will help you. Once you have used the collection, they would be available to consult with you to help you, direct you if you are going to copy or want to publish images from the collection. They will help you through the process. And this gives you that kind of information. And sometimes it's nice to have finding aids to look through. So you can print this finding aid, you can download this finding aid, so you can have access to it at your leisure. The Library of Congress is a really great example of how archives materials are organized. I had another slide on the New York Philharmonic Archives because it is amazing, and I really hope you can look at it. They have digital access to the conductor's scores, so I can look at Bernstein's conducting score for Beethoven's Fifth and see how he marked his conducting score. I can look at the violinist's part and look at the bowings that they used, or any player in the orchestra, and how they marked their parts for this a specific performance or for this work. So last month I had a call from California of a person who wanted to find parts for a specific piece, but the parts were no longer available in print. We happen to have a conducting score in our library, but the person wanted ideas in terms of bowings for the piece. Well, we looked at the New York Philharmonic Archives, and there were the parts digitally available for him to look at. You are not allowed to print these out, you're not allowed to copy them, but you can at least look at them online and use them in your study. We've talked again, and I'm going to cover this again, how to prepare to visit an archives or special collections. You do the research, you find out what they have, you look at their policies online, you communicate with the archivist, write them a letter, call them, email them, and get an idea of how much time you will need to spend to do the work you want. There are many available sources for funds and grants to support you in your research. If you end up being associated with a college or university, often they will have faculty grants, sabbaticals, where faculty can develop proposals to do research and travel and gather their information. There are also grants from societies and organizations dedicated to a specific person or area of study. So it's very important to reach out to your related associations, the Double Bass Society. There are so many different organizations, but for example, the American Musicological Society. This is a list of their travel and research grants, and they all have specific directions of how to apply and what the grant is specifically for. So we have our fund for 20th century music, research in France, research in Austria, research on the musical press. This is one of the best organizations to look at because they're invested in supporting research into music. I want to end with a story. I was watching PBS Now Hear This, a series by Scott Wu, and I learned that the Vivaldi manuscripts were not found until around the 1920s, that everyone knew of Vivaldi, that he was famous and that his music was famous, but they didn't have access to the sources. But the sources were in a church where Vivaldi had worked in a box, and one of the priests around the 1920s was trying to figure out what to do with this box and brought it to an archive in the city he was in, and they luckily were able to tell this person that this collection should remain together and should be available in an archives and museum, and now everyone has access to those scores because of that. So we cannot assume that everything that exists is still been found. And that is the exciting thing about archives and manuscripts, is they're a living documentation of a person's creative efforts. And I hope that in your lifetime you will look around where you're at and see who's creating and see who's been there before and explore their work and make those works more widely available. Please email me if you have any questions regarding your assignment. It's based on this presentation. All the links you need for the assignment are in the PowerPoint presentation that I've given to Denise to make available to you. And I hope you enjoy exploring these sources and more. Thank you so much.